Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and we are about to get started with a special broadcast today. And the rest of this week, we are going to be doing several different things. And this is for National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week 2024. But first, we're going to throw out a countdown, and we're going to jump right in. Oh, yeah, we are back. Hello. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to be doing this Friday as well. And I am here with Kristen, and she is the Eastern Regional Coordinator with the North Carolina 911 Board. How's it going?
It's going great.
We were here yesterday. We are currently live here in Burke County at 911, and it is Morganton. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, Morganton. I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing it right because I was in Florida once, and I said, "Is this Boca Raton?" And they go, "Don't you ever say that again? How dare you?" And I said, "I don't know. Like, how's it pronounced?" And they said, "It's Boca Raton." So there you go.
I would have done the same thing.
I know, right? Being up north, like what do you do? So we're here in Morganton, North Carolina, once again, Burke County 911. And yesterday I was out here with a group of amazing folks, and we did an 8-hour course that I do, and it's called Keep Broadcasting Your Message. We had a lot of people there. It was very emotional. What did you think about that?
It had some heavy moments, but it had some light moments. And I think the class was very beneficial to the folks who attended. We got lots of thank yous for putting it on, and we would love to probably do that again in the future.
Awesome. That's good, because there's a lot of people, actually, one person specifically who had said, you need to bring this to, such and such county and stuff, because they need to be able to open up and talk more. And I think that's one of the things for years. And as you know, being in dispatch as well, you were there for about 8.5 years or so before you switched over to what you're doing now. And, for you, did a lot of people talk? Were they talking even in general, communications with each other to try to understand each other, but more so for kind of those stories and just helping others that are coming in who might feel alone?
I was very fortunate with the group of folks that I worked with. I had several that became very close friends, especially since I was not from the area originally. So I kind of made a lot of new friends in dispatch, and was fortunate. If we took a bad call, we did feel fairly comfortable, turning around in the pod and saying, "Hey, let me talk about this call," or "I'm just going to get this off my chest," or "Hey, I need to vent," or "That call was rough." So I felt fortunate with that group of people that I was able to do that. But I know a lot of centers, that's not sometimes the case.
Right. Yeah. And just, thinking about it and hearing some of the folks, how they were talking as well, that people don't really talk because you had, a good experience and supportive folks around you. How does it kind of make you feel when you hear that there are some places out there that aren't really like that?
When I first started in dispatch, the facility that we were in was fairly small, and I worked for a larger PSAP, but we were very close knit in that the pods were small. We were able to kind of, turn to each other. That, I could reach out and kind of touch their chair.
Yeah.
And when we switched, we ended up getting into a much larger center. There was a lot more space between people, and I noticed that's kind of when there seemed to be more of a disconnect in that social interaction that we all need it. So I've kind of seen it on both sides. I hate that it happens. I would hope that, people are listening to this, that they're, they consider that, especially if they're in one of those situations where the pods are really big, but it's important to get to know your coworkers, and, understand their backgrounds and where they come from, and, be supportive.
Excellent. Now, as we said, you were in dispatch for about 8.5 years and such, and then you made a transition over. And before we get to that part, I want to just a little bit of background for those who are watching and listening and everything. Originally, you wanted to be a police officer, right? But also an artist.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes, not in that order, but so in high school, I loved art. So I thought I'm going to be an art student. I got into Savannah College of Art and Design at SCAD. And I quickly realized that my artistic talent was not up to par with other students who were there. Also, the art industry, particularly, I was looking at maybe animation. Um, it's very competitive, and not everybody gets an art job when you get out of school.
Right.
Also, the cost of the college was pretty expensive. It was about $25,000 a year, and I thought, do I want to be making art for people for a career, or do I just enjoy it for myself? And I think that was a turning point in my life, and I decided to go back home to New York and kind of punt and reset, if you will. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I started working a retail job. I worked at Lowe's Home Improvement. And I quickly realized retail was not for me, but I did enjoy the interaction with the public. So I went back to school for criminal justice and thought, I'm going to be a cop. And the man I was dating when I moved down here to North Carolina, he said, "You're not going to be a cop. You're too small. You should not be a cop, but you should apply for this dispatch job, because if you're interested in that, maybe that could work out well for you." So I was like, okay, I'm just going to apply for this job. And then I'm going to get my foot in the door and be a police officer.
Right.
And that didn't happen because I fell in love with dispatching. So, and I quickly realized too, being on the other side of the radio, I'm glad I'm not out there seeing these things or dealing with some of these folks. Yes, absolutely.
So do you feel like, if you just kind of thinking about it right now, going through this process and reflecting, do you feel at all that during that time at Lowe's that kind of prepared you a little bit in a way for the stuff that you ended up handling on the phone? I just mean there's a lot of different questions, right, that people probably came up to you for, and maybe even some situations where people were getting a little, I don't know, in retail. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of folks. I managed a retail store once, and people would come in because they were upset that their discount wasn't the way it was supposed to be, or they're returning it because whatever garment was messed up or something. And I feel like some of those harder interactions with folks, and you're trying to maneuver that and negotiate certain things, it kind of prepared me for some of the calls and situations that happen. How do you feel about that?
I would absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I work the return desk a lot, so
so you were definitely there.
Oh yeah, people bringing in things that belong to Home Depot, or Craftsman lawnmowers in a John Deere box, and you're like, this isn't adding up here. So, and you talk to people and say that this doesn't make sense, or we can't return this doesn't belong here, and people get upset, but you just kind of learn to just say, hey, I understand you're upset, let's get through this, or I'm sorry you have to go somewhere else. But
right.
You get that face-to-face interaction, and you also develop those relationships with those customers who come back time and time again. And
for sure, yeah.
So it definitely prepared me. And also working with a bunch of contractors, they have a very different sense of humor. So I guess that helps as well, going into the dispatch center. So
I bet. And so, looking back at, the art, wanting to be an artist and everything, I have to ask, during your time that you were in dispatch, was there ever a time that, maybe you took some harder calls or just had some harder incidents or whichever in dispatch, where you kind of went back to your art a little bit to decompress?
I would say yes. I like painting and even coloring in a coloring book. It's
right.
And we, as dispatchers, that's usually something that you might see in a comm center, and somebody sitting there and coloring, and it's a good way to de-stress after a difficult call. So absolutely.
Nice. Excellent. So you spent those 8.5 years and everything, and then you made that transition. What made you, what was the, I guess, motivation, or what inspired you to transition out?
So I went from working on the dispatch floor and into a training and compliance coordinator position. And I was there for a little under 2 years. And it just felt like at the time it was kind of meant to be. Uh, I've worked with Pokey. She actually worked at the center that I came from.
Hmm.
And Angie, who's the now training coordinator for the state, she actually hired me in 2011 to work in Raleigh. So Angie called me up and said, "Hey, I think you'd be really good for this job opening that we have." And it was hard because, you go from something that and it's kind of second nature to you, to jumping into something that's completely different, like going from training folks in 911 and on the different systems and geography and all that stuff to looking at financial statements and budgets and things was completely new to me. Like,
Yeah.
I had no finance background, but I pick up on things fairly quickly, and I know the equipment, and I've seen some quotes and things beforehand. So I was like, well, I think it's time. I think it's the right time. And so that was kind of the thing
That's awesome.
that.
So we are here this week, and thank you for indulging me for a moment to just kind of learn a little bit more about you and your background and everything, especially for the audience and everyone who's watching and such. We did a version of this last year. And again, it was for National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And we visited a couple different centers. We were recording episodes, and we were doing live broadcasts, and people were just coming in and out, in and out, in and out. And it was so much fun that, we're doing it again. And so for all of this that we're doing, before we switch to our next guest here, for those who might not know, for the North Carolina 911 board, what all do you do, and why was it important to be able to do something like this again for folks that are watching and listening, but also to highlight the 911 heroes under the headset of North Carolina?
Sure. So I guess a little bit about the board.
Mhm.
We're responsible, it's a 17-member board, and the board is responsible for collecting and kind of oversight of about $98 million a year. And that money goes back to the PSAPs in the form of grants, statewide projects that we have, such as our statewide EZNet. We the money that gets sent to the PSAPs, they're able to use that money for training, and the lights just went out, but
Yes,
we're just
that is awesome.
we're rolling with it. And so the primary focus of the board is the PSAPs. It is the 911 centers, and ultimately you can't have a 911 center if you don't have people. And so it's really important that we highlight the awesome work that is done here in North Carolina by the telecommunicators and their management across the state. And that's it.
Awesome. So for the next part of that, why was it important to be able to do this again? And even originally, the thought of doing this is something that no other state, as far as I know, is ever done. And we did this the first time last year, as I mentioned. And Sarah Weston, of the executive director and founder of 911 Wonder Women, was with us as well. And we miss you that you're not here this year, but who knows? Maybe we'll do this again next year, and we'll all be together again. So it was a lot of fun last year, all the stuff that we were doing, and so how important was this to, I guess, kind of continue this kind of almost like tradition that we're starting, something new here in North Carolina?
We really enjoyed the fact that so many telecommunicators last year took the time to share their stories, and it was very positive for them to be able to come on and joke around, but share some serious things as well.
Right,
And
yeah.
I think it just helps with them, getting things off their chest sometimes, or just being able to cut back and having some fun. So we wanted to bring that back.
Awesome. Yes, there was a huge just outpouring of just people that really enjoyed this and loved it. And then this week we've got the classes plus the live broadcast that we're doing, and we're doing this throughout the week, and it's been so much fun, and I enjoyed having you here. And we ended up being, this morning, I'll just say this really quick, like we realized we were in the same hotel. I didn't even know. I was wondering as well. I thought, I wonder where they're staying at. And then when I was walking towards the car, I just saw you going around. I was like, they're right there.
Yeah, we had no idea. We were like, I think that's Ricardo. Oh man.
Right. Oh, well, this has been really good. Again, I enjoyed having you on here,
Thank you.
and we are going to be moving forward, and we're going to be having more guests come in here. We're going to take a break at 11. It is 9:42 Eastern time right now. So at 11 a.m. Eastern, we're going to take a break, and then at 11:30, we're going to have some more folks joining us, and they're going to be on screen with us, so that's going to be fun as well. But tune in. We're just going to switch out here, and we're going to continue to stay live, and we'll continue on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Now it's super bright in here. So if you noticed, we had the lights turn off. We were all sitting so still that that's what went down. And then someone hit another light, and we had some soft lighting in here for a moment.
We had mood lighting.
Yes. All right. So I have our next guest here, and it's please introduce yourself and to the audience and what it is that you do here at Burke County 911.
Hi, I'm Lorinda Johnson. I'm the HR director for the county, and I've been a member of the Burke County organization for about 6 years, and I've been doing human resources for 43.
43.
Yeah, I was 2 years
Amazing.
old when I started.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay. Hey, the prodigy.
I'm actually getting ready to retire in 3 weeks.
Well,
So,
congratulations. That is
yes.
amazing.
And,
How does that feel?
it feels pretty good. I actually retired once and traveled for a year,
Mhm.
and so I know what to expect and what it's like, minus defining yourself by a job. So I am looking forward to it.
That's awesome. So I have to ask before we get into some of this information here, that some of the stuff that I want to go over and stuff. I was just scanning through it. I thought this is going to be good. This is stuff that I wondered about when I was in dispatch, but also I'm sure others who are watching, who are, getting into recruitment and pros, cons, like all of it and everything. But when you retired that first time, how did it? It's weird. I'm getting goosebumps asking you this because I guess I think about it sometimes when I get to that point, like how it's going to be. And the reason I ask this too is because my father is getting close to doing the same thing. But what he keeps telling me is I don't know if I can not work. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he goes, I feel like if I slow down, like my mind and my body's going to slow down as well. So he's kind of, scared about that. So for that year, when you retired that first time, did you ever have any of those moments, or was it bittersweet, or what was it really
I
like?
can tell you feel off balance
Really?
for a period of time.
Mhm.
And over time, you realize you're still a daughter, you're still a friend. You still are an important member of the community. You still have your value systems.
Mhm.
You still have your family. You still have you're a full human being, minus a career. This one's going to be hard for me. I've got a phenomenal boss. I have a phenomenal staff. I like the work I do.
Yeah.
I'm paid well. And to walk away from something that's good instead of escaping something can be difficult, but
Yes.
it's time. And again, I've been there already, and look forward to working out and getting physically fit, which
There you go.
I don't have the energy, I guess, and time to do right now, and do some more travel again. And so again, looking forward to it. But I can't say it's an easy transition, that first 2 or 3 months, to redefine yourself and figure out who you are minus a job.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I've spoken to a few people recently who, and not going into retirement, but just simply transitioning out of 911, and it's been what they've known for all of these years, right? And then, as you're saying, you're trying to figure out, well, where do I go from here? What defines me? Who am I? But then also, at least in that sense, for dispatch, a lot of those calls come back, but not just that. Now you're slowing down and everything is catching back up to you. So for example, when I left dispatch, I hadn't really thought about my own physical well-being, because when you're on the go and on the go and on the go, no matter what profession it is, you're really not thinking about anything. You're just going because you're in the thick of it. You're dialed in. And then when you have those moments, like for me, my back and my neck, like everything that was going on in dispatch that I wasn't paying attention to, those pains and aches and pains started coming back tenfold.
Absolutely. So I am looking forward to working out, lifting some weights,
Right.
getting myself in good physical shape. And another great thing right now, the timing, HR is no exception to the labor shortage. And it's very easy to do HR consulting.
Hmm.
For small organizations they aren't large enough to have an HR team,
Hmm.
but they need HR when they need it.
Yeah,
kind of
right.
thing.
Yes.
And so I plan to do and make myself avail myself. And you can do so much, as you know,
Yeah.
virtually now.
See,
That I plan to avail myself to do that, but I'll work when I feel like it.
there, it's that
Do the
right
work-
there. I can see it in your smile. Like I
do
can
the work
feel
that
the
I wanna
vibe.
do.
Like I'm ready for this. And so before we jump into this,
Exactly.
I just have one more question
Sure.
for you. How did you know that it was time? Like you've been saying, like, I feel it. It's time. Was there a certain incident, or was there a moment, or were you just sitting there one day looking up at the sky and you're like, it's time?
Well, I never wanted to be one of those people that was retired on the job,
Mhm.
lost their motivation, and just skated and weren't really contributing at peak performance. So I was monitoring myself and starting to think about it. And then my husband couldn't get rid of a cough after he recovered from a COVID
Mhm.
incident in the fall. And a chest x-ray revealed an enlarged heart and fluid around his heart. And I went, maybe it's time to stop and refocus my priorities in my
Mhm.
life and spend some more time, because we're not promised tomorrow.
Very true. Yes. Yeah, there's definitely a lot that goes into that, and to have that moment that you a lot of things, a lot of variables, a lot of factors that come into whatever our lives, bring, and the lives of our loved ones as well. There's those decisions, and you felt it. I mean, I can feel it off of you, and I'm so excited for you. Like this is going to be good, and the fact that you can make yourself available to still do certain things, but in a smaller scale, that that keeps that fire going a little bit as well for some of those.
One conversation I had with my current boss, the county manager, phenomenal, by the way,
Mhm.
is that if you need me for anything, I'm not dying. And I'm leaving absolutely loving my job and my boss and my career. And so if you need me, I'll just payroll me through a temp agency or something, and
There you
I'll come
go.
back and help as needed.
Oh, that is beautiful. I love that. So as you said, you've got over 40 years.
43 years
Yeah,
of HR.
43 years with HR. And so I want to talk about some of the recruiting of 911, because it's a big thing
Yeah.
that everyone across the country is dealing with, where the short staffing just everywhere.
Mhm.
So there might be some challenges when it comes to recruiting. So what are some of those challenges that you've seen, or that you've dealt with here, or even that you've heard about in other places?
There are two departments that I think are pose the biggest challenge in government here at Burke County, and that would be 911, and the other would be the jail. And the reason I think that they're so unique and so challenging is they're some of the most important and responsible positions in an organization. I explained to telecommunicators when I've done training over here, and have been fortunate enough to be invited to some of their staff meetings. A 911 telecommunicator is honestly, and I mean it sincerely, more important than the HR director. There is nothing I do 365 days a year that's going to result in somebody living or dying. Nothing. They are more important than me. But it's often, as your last speaker, it's often an entry level, hey, I think I'll try that type of role for people. So you're getting often younger people, and you're getting people that are, this is their first foray into public safety. So you're getting lack of experience at the same time you're in one of the most responsible positions. That's an interesting combination. You
Right.
don't always have seasoned people, the maturity that just comes with time and age. You don't always have that, but you are in a job that requires that level of dedication and maturity.
Mhm.
And so people don't always act like they're as important as I think they are. So I think in those two groups, we do see a need to coach and counsel people through a lot of things. You heard me speak earlier. I view those issues in two buckets. One are people that willfully and intentionally don't do what they know they're supposed to be doing, misconduct, and people that are really struggling, trying to learn a new profession and all of that. And this organization goes to the ends of the earth to try to help a person be successful when they're doing their best and struggling. On the other hand, when you're willfully and intentionally putting public safety at risk, that's a whole, it may not be the profession for you.
That is very true. And, you know, excuse me, I hate that sometimes, in a way, it gets to a point in some places, not all places, but in some places, it gets to a point where you end up learning the hard way. And what is bad about that as well is that in this profession, sometimes you can't learn the hard way, because learning the hard way also could potentially put people at risk. So for here in Burke County, and because I know in the county that the last county that I was in, Allegan County, HR played a big part in the hiring process as well. So and I remember being nervous going in there, like, you're going to have to go and meet with HR. So what did I do? I'm not even hired yet. And they're like, no, it's just part of the process. You just go in and they're going to interview. They're going to, you know, you can ask questions about certain things. So for those who might want to know, especially those who are thinking about getting into the profession, what part does HR play in the hiring process?
We make sure the job descriptions are correct. We make sure that we advertise it and tell you exactly what you will be doing and what the schedules are, what to expect, what's important, kind of thing. And during the onboarding, everybody attends a new hire orientation, and we actually tell them these are the policies that end up getting people to human resources for the wrong reason. So don't do these.
Right.
And we do think that that's a deterrent. To tell people up front, look, these are missteps people have made in the past. Don't make these.
Right.
And so I think that's helpful, especially when somebody's new in their career, to get, to receive that information up front.
For sure. Yeah, no, that is a really good thing, because it's almost like when someone goes to do a sit along before even getting to, you or anybody else, that you want to make sure that they feel like not only that they can do it, but also it's something that they really want to get into, because they might sit there, everything is going to heck, and they're hearing this and thinking, this might not be, the thing that I'm looking for. So in that same sense, once they get through, or, whatever part of the hiring process, they get to you, and, you start telling them, these are some of the things, don't do this stuff. If someone feels like they don't want to get into it from that point, then maybe that was a good thing.
And night shift, and whether you're a paramedic in an ambulance or whether you're in a comm center at 911, night shift, they have a lot of time on their hands. They're in very close proximity physically, and a lot of time to talk to each other. It's very easy for people to slip into conversations that get too casual, sharing their political views, sharing their religious views,
right?
Senses of humor that may cross a line. It's very easy to slip into those, and we try to coach people up front on, look, be mindful of that, and make sure that you don't slip into that, because this is a environment where it calls for the highest level of professionalism. And don't slip into those habits.
Right. Especially because depending on, let's just say, the way the audio is, the gain in a lot of those microphones, if you are, jabbering on and laughing or whatever, you might end up with Lorinda here. And the reason I say that is only because it's going to go over on the radio. People are going to hear it. Or not just that, when someone is on the phone, let's just say, for example, if someone is telling a joke, I don't know, let's just say they're telling a story or something, and someone is on the phone, and it's a high priority complaint that is going on. If for whatever reason there's a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act that is put in for that audio, and you can hear them in the background. Oh,
It's a problem.
that is a problem, right? That's not good. And we always used to say to people, if you're saying it out loud, or even if you're typing something, sending a message over, if it's something that you don't want to end up on the news, don't do it. And still sometimes people do, but that was something that we always said, like, don't do it, because that'll be the time that you end up getting called in and you're like, oh no, what do I do?
One of the things that you wouldn't know is I have actually picked up the phone and called 911 before and needed the assistance, was the victim of stranger violence. It's such a lifeline, and you don't want you want a serious professional on the other end.
Of course.
Whether your spouse is having a heart attack or you've just been assaulted, and you pick up the phone, you want to know that the person on the other end, their 100% priority is their safety and helping them, kind of thing. And you don't want to hear people laughing and telling inappropriate jokes.
Right. Yeah.
Things on the other end. And I just keep going back to, folks, don't define yourself by your title or your hourly rate of pay. Define yourself by how important what you do is, and you have to act that way every day in the role.
For sure. And especially because it could have been the first time that you're calling in. And I tell people all the time, sometimes calls come in and the premise sounds outrageous. But you treat every single one of those, no matter how outrageous it sounds, this is priority one. Like, everything is going on, because again, it could be the first time that someone is calling, and that impression will stay with them, and they might not call again.
We had a complaint recently, 2 weeks ago, about paramedics on the scene of a person who had a heart attack and died in their living room, and our alleged paramedics laughing, joking, cutting up about something else, not the situation,
right?
Inappropriate for the spouse that's there at the toughest moment of their life. It turned out it wasn't our employees. It turned out it was the organization that is sent to remove the body, kind of thing. So it wasn't our employees. But again, the whole point was, even though you're not making fun of the situation or the individuals, it's certainly the people felt that made the trauma of the spouse worse by people cutting up and laughing.
So how does that, and I know there's only so much you can say, but how, when something like that happens for HR specifically, what happens with you then? Like, how do you're taking the complaint and you start, assessing the situation, whatever happened, what is that process for you? That goes into it.
I've done this long enough. I never make assumptions. Just because somebody tells me something so doesn't mean it's so. So I go into every allegation of anything related to our employees completely blank slate. Talk to everybody who's a firsthand witness, gather all the information, to try to make sure that you get all the facts before you make any conclusions. And then in this case, I took it seriously and got back to the person. I'm so sorry you experienced that. I'm sorry your mother experienced that. Does your mother need to get a telephone call from me to tell her how sorry I am? It turns out it wasn't our staff, but that doesn't mean that I'm not concerned.
True.
Would you like me to follow up with that organization that we, who do the transport kind of thing, to help educate them? Do you want to call them? But circle back with people. I think they want to know they've been heard, that you take them seriously, and that you follow up.
I think that's one of the most important things, because you are, just as you said, you're basically going above and beyond. It turned out that it wasn't anyone here or anything like that. It was a different organization, but you were letting them know how important that situation was, no matter what, and those people are going to remember that, and that's the kind of trust and everything that you want the community to have in your organization with situations like that.
I still care, even though it wasn't our employees.
Right.
What can I do to help?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at, some of the information that's on here to kind of go over and stuff. And I'm looking at, some of the team building events. How does that work? And how do you even decide? I mean, is it just the director? Does the director come to you to try to figure all of those events out? What part does HR play in that as well?
It is challenging when you've got 4 shifts. I can tell you that one of the things that I'm impressed with here is your top leadership, your 2 managers and your director. They are here on all 4 shifts. They don't just operate Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, because that's what's convenient for them.
Right.
And neither does human resources. So when we're invited to come in and do training, when we're invited to come in for team building or staff meetings, brainstorming sessions, that kind of thing to solve issues, we come when they're here. And I think that tells people, I don't just say you're an important asset to the organization. I show you are, because I'm willing to be here at 3 a.m. and I'm willing to be here on weekends. And I just think, how can you tell people they're important if you don't show them you're important enough for us to be here when you need us here?
Right. I love that. This has been awesome talking with you. I'm enjoying this, because that is a good segue actually into a question that I want to ask you as well. Out of your 43 years in the position that you've had in different organizations and everything, what have you seen that has been kind of a common a common occurrence for short staffing? Like, why do you feel that people leave? Like, in your, I guess, just your expertise, what have you seen over the years? Like, is there something common, or?
There is. The governing organization for human resources is called the Society for Human Resources Management, which is SHRM. You've probably heard of SHRM.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And every year they do surveys of what makes people start looking for another job. And year in and year out, decade in and decade out, the answer is somebody around them is making them miserable. It's not the function. It's not the pay. I'm not saying people don't get a raise when they make a job change.
Of course.
But that's not what motivated them. What motivated them is they don't feel good every day because somebody's making them miserable, whether it's a supervisor that doesn't show gratitude, doesn't train them well, or whether it's coworkers that are mean, kind of thing. The number one reason that people change jobs is because somebody around them is making them unhappy. And so we talk about the importance of courtesy, respect, and professionalism. We don't need coworkers to all be best friends and invite each other over to each other's houses for barbecues, but you do have to at least be as nice to each other as you would a new hire that just started that day.
Right.
And if you start allowing that disrespect, us versus them, kind of thing, that is what will drive your turnover more than anything else.
Oof. There you have it. Like, because one of the things that I do, I mentioned earlier that I was teaching yesterday, and one of the portions of the course that I do, it's basically a back to basics on communications, but through the power of storytelling. And what I mean by that is there's a segment in there called Triumph Through Struggle. And what it's all about is trying to get some of the more seasoned dispatchers and the newer dispatchers to specifically communicate with each other, because as dispatch, we're amazing at communications, but sometimes when we're communicating with each other, it doesn't always work, like, for whatever reason. And I think that, not that I think, I'm a firm believer that there's a point that we get to in this profession, and it's probably in any profession, really, not just 901, but any profession, that at a certain point in time, you forget what it was like in the beginning. So you've got these folks that are coming in, and in some places people act like, well, I'm not going to learn your name until you actually get through, and that makes that person not feel welcomed. They want to leave already.
Two things that can help. While there's legal reasons that only management should make the decision on who gets hired, if you involve your seasoned long-term staff in the process, their voice is heard on who they think should be hired. They're invested in that person's success because they gave them the thumbs up. And the other thing is a buddy and mentor system, where if you're intimidated by going to the team leader or the supervisor or the manager when you have a question or a concern, here's your business partner. Again, it gets the investment of your seasoned staff with your brand new hires.
I love that. And so, just kind of touching on, a buddy system or mentorship, like, when I first started out in the central dispatch that I was at, even in the single seat PD that I was in Florida way back in the day, um, I feel like it would have been nice to have not so much a mentorship, because for those who might not know, there is a difference between the two. A mentorship is more so for like those professional, like career goals and professional development, where the buddy system is more so someone who is kind of side by side with you for tasks and everyday operations and such. I would have loved to have had something like that, where they're not so much, they're not the trainer, they're not a supervisor, they're one of your peers, right? And they're there for those everyday questions, whether it's every day during training or whichever, because eventually they'll end up becoming a friend as well. But it started out as that buddy part. So for you, I guess, what are some of the ways to kind of implement that?
It's that simple of
Yeah.
just here's what we're going to do.
Right.
And who would like to have a hand in ensuring the success of our new people, and that they have a good experience come aboard, that we'll talk to them. How was your first day?
Mhm.
How was your first week? What's the most challenging?
Right.
What's that kind of thing. And it's literally implementing that program. At the same time, you're also developing future supervisors and team leaders and leadership. That's a great foray into learning how to help people succeed.
So in your experience as well, is it safe to say that in different organizations where people actually feel welcome, they feel recognized, that their ideas or whichever are actually being heard, those people stay? I mean, there's a lot of places where I've been and I've talked to dispatchers, and they would say, I'm traveling an hour when I could be traveling only 10 minutes away, but the one that's an hour away, even though it's not more money, it's less money, it's the fact that my mental health and well-being is way better because it's in a place where we are recognized. I would rather do that versus the other route.
And I'm not minimizing. It's important to pay people market competitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to have good benefits.
For sure. Yeah.
And that sort of thing. But if you really want to know how to stem turnover, it is make people feel supported, make people feel important. And when the alarm clock goes off, make them want to come into work instead of dread it. And that's really the key. And if you want to know how to do that, you do what we do here. We attend staff meetings and we say, okay, folks, tell us what makes you happy, what motivates you, what makes you want to be here, why are you here, what parts of the job, or what parts of being here, what you could work anywhere, why here, why do you keep coming back, and remind people of it's our job to make sure that our new hires recognize and feel all of this, and each one of you have to play a role in that. There's
got to be a buy-in, right? Mm-hmm. All over. And so here's a question. It's going to sound odd, but can we clone you? And
you can hire me as a consultant after I retire.
Yeah, there you go. Yes, Lorenda's going to be doing the consulting thing. So because this is all stuff that people need to hear, and I'm glad that I was able to have you on here to talk about this and everything, and really push this, because it's a crisis everywhere. And it's not just in this profession, but especially for 911 all over the place. People are short staffed and they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And a lot of people that I've spoken to, and I tell people too, as I'm looking at all of you here in the camera, I'm not dumb. I do know there's a lot of factors when it comes to money and benefits and everything, but I'm a firm believer, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. If you can fix your culture, then that is going to get people to stay. We all want more 911 dispatchers, but if we can't fix this, you're going to be pulling people into toxic places, and not all places are like that. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. But in some places it is. And do you want them to come in?
For me to tell you a story.
Yes, please.
I worked in an engineering firm that had a circuit board manufacturing, and we knew it was a mess. And we hired a gentleman to come in, Eric Langell, if you're out there somewhere. Came on board, and he changed the physical layout of the entire plant and changed everybody's job description of who did what and how they did it. People hate change. They even hate good change. And he made all this transformation of manufacturing, and not one person quit, and the turnover stopped, and everybody was happy. And I called him in one day and said, how on earth did you do that? Because people don't even like good change. And he said, I never make a decision. I'm not an autocrat. I pulled the entire team in and said, here is what we have to achieve. You guys tell me what all action steps we need to take to achieve that. And then in the end, they go, so this was your idea, wasn't it, Lorenda? Would you take charge of making that happen? And this was your idea, Heather. Would you please make that happen, kind of thing? And he goes, they come up with, I already knew what needed to be done, but they'll come up with the same ideas. And then you can put them in charge of it, and they go home saying, I came up with an idea and I'm actually in charge of making it happen. And if you just came out with the same decision and said, here's what you're going to do starting tomorrow, and addressed it as an autocrat and a dictator.
Right.
You got resistance to change. You got people to resent it. Oh, one more thing I got to take on.
Right.
And you get resentment. But if you involve them in here's the goal, you tell me how to achieve that goal, and then put them in charge of their own ideas, you can move mountains. And I know that, again, it goes back to, that's the culture of, you're important enough for me to ask. You're important enough to me that I recognize you have as many answers as I do. And just treating people in a collaborative way instead of a dictator, autocratic kind of way is the key from a leadership standpoint.
Wow. But that was a great way to wrap up this portion of this. And that was amazing. I really enjoyed talking to you and having you on here, and the way you think. And again, just going to be consulting. So look out for Lorenda. Thank you so much for being on.
You're
This
welcome.
was
Thank you
a
for
pleasure.
having me on today. It was a pleasure.
It was great. Thank you. So we are going to continue on. We have some other folks that are going to be jumping in here momentarily, and this was awesome. And I hope all of you that are watching right now and everything got something, especially out of this piece, because I know a lot of you out there are dealing with short staffing issues, and a lot of folks that we got to figure this out. We got to work together on this. And I keep saying that only we are going to be able to figure this out. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to do certain things, but if we can't connect with each other and learn from each other and help people feel recognized, then what are we doing? People are not going to stay. So that was awesome to have Lorenda on. And if you can throw your headphones on there, please. We've got our next guest here. Linda, how's it going?
It's not too bad. How are you?
I'm doing all
I'm
right.
nervous.
Oh, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. Everything is going to be good. Don't worry. It was so we just jump in really quick. We'll just jump in. And
Okay.
So yesterday, Linda here. Actually, what is your title here at the dispatch center?
Technically, I haven't started here yet. I just interviewed.
Oh, snaps. Okay. Well then.
Yep, just interviewed today. So
Either way, that is awesome. But some of your background. How many years have you been in public safety?
20 years, a little over 20 years. I started November 3rd, 2003, and was with the same agency for 20 plus years, and moved up to supervisor, and absolutely love it.
That is awesome. So let's talk a little bit about yesterday. So you were one of the attendees in the class that I gave
Yes.
yesterday. You were sitting pretty much right up front and stuff, and we were going through a lot of different things. I shared my story. There's a lot of folks that were sharing their stories. You shared a story of your own that was part of Imagine Listening, and I guess what I want to get from you is what you thought about the class, and it just in the sense of how different it is that we're talking to each other and trying to figure out how to connect more. I mean, we're there, this over 20 years and everything. You're there with people more than you are with your family, but not a lot of times do we actually talk about some of the things that are either bothering us for whatever reason, for whatever fear there might be or anything. But
Stigma.
yeah. So how did you feel being there with all those folks that were there in a safe place and really just kind of talking out a lot of these experiences?
It honestly, and I'm not trying to brown nose you, but it truly was the best course I've had. Um,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
at a time in my career that I absolutely needed it. I've transitioned from the same agency, looking to go to this new agency, 3 hours from home, um, leaving my family behind. It's a large walk of faith for me. I felt led to come this way. Um, having gone through a seriously difficult call involving one of my officers, I struggled immensely. Needed a couple days. Unfortunately, that couple days turned into 3 months. I have not physically worked since that incident. I have had contact with the officer involved, which was very healing. Unfortunately, it was quite a while before that occurred, but I sought out personal counseling and then was mandated to additional counseling and doctor. They all three were phenomenal. Um, they were very helpful and really helped me get through a very dark time for me.
Mhm.
Um, my responders are my children. I, I I look at them as my children, and I don't go home till they're home and they're safe. And that is, to me, as a dispatcher, my first priority. Um, so, to potentially having lost one of those, I have lost one in the line of duty. And so, flashbacks are real. PTSD is real. Anxiety is real. Unfortunately, I did not get the support that I needed with my prior agency. Hopefully, having gone through what I did, I'm hoping it'll be an eye opener for them to see that in the future, if anyone needs it, that it is very real and you do need that support. You do need that contact. I was blessed to have some longtime friends and coworkers through there, as well as my family. Um, and they helped me get through it and succeed. So, having taken your course yesterday was truly the icing on the cake. And, to come to a new facility with total complete strangers and to have them support me, not knowing me, and absolutely understanding how I was feeling, because some of them have also felt it. And even if they hadn't felt it, they were still willing to care and show and express, to me. And it was very healing. And I truly hope that you continue with it. And I truly hope that other agencies will reach out and take advantage of it, because it I can't express how good it was. It truly was. I went home to my apartment last night and called my husband, and he was like, "That is awesome." I mean, he was happy, and he's heard my stories over the years, so he's been in the comm center, so he gets it, but he doesn't
Right.
until you've walked that walk. You don't totally 100% get it. Thankfully, one of my therapists was a firefighter for 12 years, so he's walked the walk. My doctor was also a paramedic before becoming a doctor, so they just were phenomenal in helping me get through everything and 100% supportive. So
I think that's one of the probably the best things when you're when you take that first step, when you're ready and you take that first step to but especially if you know it, and the way you're talking as well, like you felt it right away after that call,
Yes.
like you needed to seek it out and everything. And to have someone that you speak to that, as you put it, has walked the walk, that you there's a deeper trust, right, and connection. Where, just for example, when we had an incident happen when I was in dispatch, and we had a counselor who I'm sure was amazing at what he does, but when we started talking and we put it out there, and the first response was, "Well, how does it make you feel?" And we were just kind of sat there, and I right, yeah, we had the same thing. We kind of chuckled because I thought, yeah, this is I and for whatever reason, so there was three of us, I believe, in there, and for whatever reason, I think it's because I was sitting closer than everybody else, I ended up being the designated person to speak. And they just looked at me when I looked at them, and I could I could hear what they were saying just by their look, and I could feel it. And I turned and I looked at him and I said, Sir, I'm sure you are great at what you do. However, um, I don't think you're right for us." And he must have felt it as well, because he said too, "You're probably right. You'll have to seek out another one." And I've heard a lot of people say that it takes a little bit of time when you are reaching out for help, or finding a therapist, to find basically like your person, that really understands. And for you, two different people, they had the background, and it just allows you to open up a little bit more.
And easier, and they were able to prompt from their own experiences and understanding.
Mhm.
So it made the dialogue that much simpler. And I was very blessed to have a support group through in my county that is made up of law enforcement and EMS and various different public safety folks that they're with a nonprofit called Big and Small Peer Support.
Mhm.
And thankfully that night one of them was on duty and reached out to me and said, "I'm here. If anybody needs it tonight, I'm here." And I immediately reached out and cried on her shoulder for about 20 minutes. And, they were the ones that actually put me in touch with the personal counselor. And knowing me personally, they were able to easily put me with somebody that they knew I'd be able to talk to simply. And come to find out, I'd actually met him several years earlier. So it was just everybody putting in and getting me where I needed to be.
And having that type of support as well, that many people who are putting themselves out there like that also helps you open up more, because
Yes.
you're like, these people actually do care. They're not here just because it's their job. It's just, for whatever reason, they might have something that that happened to them, in
Yes.
their past, something that pushed them towards wanting to be this person for other people. And that is that good cycle that you want to continue going on, like that leaving that legacy and everything. So I am so happy that and I have to say this, and I hope you don't mind,
No.
but Linda's sitting up front with there was a person sitting next to her. Her name was Beth, and the both of them were just in tune, and you were. So this is something funny about the class. I had mentioned towards the end, and this was probably like the last couple hours or something, maybe the last hour or so. I end up mentioning, if there's anything, because Linda has said, and I had told everybody in the beginning, if you need me to go back a slide so that you can write some stuff down or take a picture, let me know. And there was a few times, and then I, towards the end already, I ended up saying, if you want the presentation, I'll simply send it to you so you have the slide of information. And
Let
Linda,
me just email it.
yes, that look right there. Linda gave a look, and I went, "Oh, did I not mention this in the beginning of class?"
No. No, it was like, really? We all this picture and writing? No.
Right. Yes. And Linda had tons of notes that she was taking, which also it made me happy as well to see you and a lot of other folks just taking notes and really taking it in, but also listening to each person talk and some of the stuff that they learned or some of the experience that they had. I noticed a lot of you were writing things down while others were talking and sharing their experiences as well. And I think that's why it made it that much more powerful, because we're all learning from each other. There's some things that maybe I went through that you didn't, or maybe you guys went through that I didn't, and I'm learning from all of you as much as you're learning from my experience. So
Well,
that
and then
was really
they could
good.
take how they handled it,
Hmm.
and maybe I haven't been there yet, but tomorrow's a new day, and you never know what it's going to bring you.
Right.
And what if one of my folks needs something that I may not have experienced, but Mr. Don, who came to our meeting, did, and I can pull what worked for him, and maybe it'll help my folks.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I like to take notes and take it back and share it with someone that may not have been able to be here. I actually did last night, by the
Mhm.
way. I spoke to a prior coworker who went through a double homicide recently, and I believe it was yesterday, they actually did their debriefing. And unfortunately, we're very disappointed because the only ones that apparently showed um, were the dispatchers and one officer. Unfortunately, EMS was involved, all the way to animal control was involved in this call, and no one else came. And it was a huge disappointment, and
Right.
she didn't get the resolve she needed. And I was aware of it, so I called her last night, especially after your class, and talked with her and let her share and let her get it out, because you have to talk about it. You can't hold that in, because it's like a disease, and it'll eat you up,
Right.
and you have to get it out. And it seems the more I share it, the easier the burden gets. It's not so heavy anymore, and it's not so taking over my every waking thought. Even if I would turn over in the middle of the night, it was there. It haunted my dreams, and that would wake me up. And I'm not having that anymore, because I've been able to share it and get it out of me. And that in itself is powerful. So reaching out to her and telling her some of the things I learned with you, and discussing that. And I told her, I said, you have got to take this course. You will love it. And wishing I could have just brought her yesterday, but she'd have gotten more out of that than her debriefing. So
I I thank you for that. And I've been doing it for years, and it everything. Sometimes people ask, how did this start? And I say it was from my struggle. Like, people didn't know, and I had really good friends there, and one that I grew up with, and she didn't even know, and I was just bearing everything, and then finally it boiled over. But it was because of that fear, that, like, the stigma that we
yes.
talk about, and it's getting better, right? It's been getting better since about 2016 or so, but there's still places where everyone is just,
Well, and for dispatchers, it's even more difficult. You know, they saw it for law enforcement, they see it for EMS, they see it for firemen. They figure it doesn't affect us because we don't see it. We may not see it, but we hear it.
hmm
And when you hear those screams and cries, it rocks you to your core. And sometimes I truly believe what we imagine could at times be worse than what actually happened. And so realizing that dispatchers are part of public safety, that we are the first responder, that's huge.
hmm
That's huge steps in the right direction. We're still not where we need to be, but that is huge steps in the correct direction. And hopefully a couple more years we'll be there and be recognized. And, they're starting to realize PTSD for us is real, not including what you may have experienced before you got into this profession.
Right.
A lot of times people come into this profession based on what they experienced in their personal life and the help they got. And now they want to pass that help on, even though they had trauma. Now they're adding more trauma. So, yeah, we're just as susceptible. And thankfully, I had prior um, dealings with a therapist before, many, many years ago. And they helped me. I'm not afraid to talk about it. And I figure if somebody can learn from me and not be afraid, more power. It's just more power out there to do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. We can't take care of anybody else till we take care of us.
Exactly.
And that's a hard lesson to learn being a mama, because you take care of everybody else first.
Right.
So, yes, it's a very hard lesson. And I had to learn it over the past 3 months. And if it wasn't for the support of family, friends, coworkers, old coworkers, a wonderful director here, I wouldn't be able to hold my head up right now. I was in a dark place, and it was very rough. And to talk to coworkers and find out comments that were being said, that's hard. It's very difficult to hear that. But luckily, I don't let that define it, and all I can do is pray that someday they don't have to go through it, because it's not easy, and it is a hole, and you got to grab yourself by the bootstraps and yank yourself out.
Right.
Because if not, it'll consume you. And I got too much more to do to be consumed by that.
I love that. And I think what I love the most as well, when you were sitting up there, I can't remember exactly what it was that we were talking about, but it was the smile on your face and the look in your eyes. I think it was just talking about the profession, how you feel about it, and how it gets into your blood. And I could see it and feel it from you that you just love this profession.
Yes.
You are fully in, and the fact that even though you had this, all this trauma and everything that happened, you worked through it all. And look, I just found this out today, just a little while ago. You ended up calling a friend, and you talked to them, and that is the cycle that we want to continue. Is folks like us helping folks like us, because we only have each other. We understand each other. And even though those out in the field have walked the walk as well, they haven't walked our walk. I mean, there are some folks, right,
Yes.
that transition out or in or whichever. That's different. I just mean there are some that don't know.
It's still
And
a different animal.
that's how we relate to each other. And that's how we're also going to get, people to continue to stay in the profession as well, by recognizing this, by talking it out, and actually communicating and supporting each other.
Yeah. Communication lacks in communication.
How crazy is that?
I've said it for years. It's so sad, but it was nice. I talked to because the pictures they took yesterday, I totally forgot they took pictures. And when I talked to my friend, she says, "The look on your face," she said, "I have not seen that Linda in a really, really long time." And she said, "You were just glowing." And she goes, "Knowing how dark it's been for you," she said, "that made my heart happy." And she made me cry. I'm going to make me cry again.
Are you going to make me cry?
And I said, "Did you see the puppy?" She's like, "Oh, what I wouldn't give for the puppy."
Yes, for those who are watching and listening right now, we the director here, Heather Joyner, she has she's got a dog. It's a Labradoodle, right?
Mhm.
And her name is Ellie, and most fun dog, and very cool. I've got a good friend who's out of North Carolina as well. His name is Ryan Chambers, and he has a dog as well, and Labradoodle. His name is Chase. But here we had Ellie running
Yes.
around, and if you haven't seen the pictures yet, I'm going to post them up because there's a picture where I think it was right at the beginning of open mic, and she jumps up and she's just looking in the window like, where am I at?
Yes.
Can I come in and play? But she's got her little leg like almost as if she's sitting like this.
Yeah.
Like just watching.
Like
and
she's
it
learning
was-
too.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it was. And it was just a good experience all around. And I'm glad that we were able to be here and to be able to do this. And so I do want to ask you actually, how did you get into public safety to begin with? I mean, you said it was 20 years ago. So how did you get involved, and what was it like in the beginning? The reason I asked that part too is because we were all joking and talking about how in some places when people first started out dispatching, they had a punch card, and those who are newer to dispatch or younger or whichever, it was a card about this big, and it was like a time clock, and you would write down the information or the complaint, and when someone would call out a time, you would punch it for the time and go through the whole complaint. And I didn't have to do that,
I
but
didn't
some
either,
of
thank God.
oh good. That's good. But some people did have to do that,
Yes.
and that's how it was. So for you, how did you get into it, and what was it like in the beginning?
It was actually kind of, I was one of those Rescue 911 kids.
Same.
Yes.
Same.
And it was funny because I had always wanted to be a paramedic.
Mhm.
And I became a very young mother, and Rescue 911 came on, and I can remember sitting there watching it. I was an avid watcher, and I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. And I don't know how old, a teenager, I don't know, maybe. And then life went on and did multiple other things. And actually, my daughter's best friend, his father had a car accident,
Mhm.
and he couldn't go back to work on what he was doing, and he had brought her over for a sleepover. And I asked him if he was back to work, and he says, actually, he goes, I'm at the sheriff's office. And I remember looking at him going, you're not a deputy. That's what I equated with the sheriff's office. You're not a
Right.
deputy. And he goes, actually, I work in 911. I said, what? I need an application for that, please. And that set the ball rolling. And I applied one more time after that because they had filled the position. And I went in and sat on 3 occasions for about 4 hours, and I was hooked. Oh, I was hooked. And then I went in, and they said, well, can you come in for fingerprinting? Sure. So I came in for fingerprinting, and I said, does this mean I have a job or what? And they're like, yeah, when can you start? What? I hadn't even interviewed, nothing. No interview, no nothing. Done. And I said, well, I got to give 2 weeks notice. So I gave my 2 weeks notice on a Friday at 9:00 in the morning. And I had interviewed for an adjuster's position, which was good money, in a car, working from home with Nationwide. And at 1:00, that gentleman called for a second interview. And when you get a second interview, you got the job.
Hmm.
And I said, I'm so sorry. I submitted my resignation this morning. And he said, what? Well, may I ask what you're going to be doing? I said, actually, my dream job since I was a kid. And he says, well, what's that? And I said, 911. He goes, whoa, that's the opposite end of the rainbow. Yeah. And he said, well, if it doesn't work out, I want you to call me. I said, I don't think you're going to hear from me. And he never heard from me. But I came in, and my 3rd day of training, I remember looking at my trainer, and I said, dude, you got to move. I got to touch it. You need to get out of my way. And that was all she wrote.
Oh, wow. It was that fast.
Yes. I was addicted as soon as I walked in the room, even though it was a tiny little, I think, our room, maybe this big. and Cracker Box, and they just moved to a brand new facility in September. But so we actually have room and light. It's weird, windows. But yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Oh wow! So for those who are watching and listening, just to kind of illustrate, to paint a picture, you're walking in, and you said it's kind of a room like this, but what is it that you see? Are there multiple monitors, multiple keyboards,
Oh
multiple
yes.
people? What did it look like, and how did it feel when you were first walking in there?
Back in the day, there was only two of us.
Hmm.
Now we're up to minimum of three, maximum. Um, Fully staffed is five. I haven't seen that yet. Um, Unfortunately, why nobody does this is beside me. But where else can you go to work and never know what you're going to get? Every call, transmission, it may be from the same person, but it's still different.
Yeah.
Every single thing is different. And that is probably my favorite thing. And you're always learning. I learn something new every day. I tell my folks, when you get to the point you think you know it all, it's time to get out because you're going to kill somebody. But it, you are constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly helping. And do we make mistakes? Of course, everybody makes mistakes,
Right. We're human.
but we do our very best. I picture it's my mama, my kid. What can I do? And sometimes you got to think outside the box. But walking into that room, it's dark, it's shabby, it, it was a mess. It was a mess. We had nice consoles though, and you're able to stand or sit, two rows of monitors, three keyboards, two mouses. I can run a mouse from both hands, and your headset. And
Yeah.
I just love my headset, but a lot of folks would still hold a phone and a headset. No, nope, can't do it.
I was that person. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I was telling, for those who are watching and listening, I was telling a story yesterday that when I got out of dispatch, because we had headsets, we did have them, but sometimes folks would forget to charge the batteries. And then I would just be like, "Ah, I don't care. I'm just I'm gonna hold it this way. Well, apparently I held it that way a little too long, because then when I go to the chiropractor for the first time, they have to, and every office is different, right? But I had to have an x-ray so that they can see, where to focus on the adjustments. And my my chiropractor ends up saying, Ricardo, can you come over here a minute? And I said, yeah, sure. And he goes, I want you to look at this. And I said, I'm not like you. Like, what am I looking at here? I don't know how to read this. And he goes, oh, look closer. You don't need any experience. You'll see what it is. And this was the thing.
Right.
You could see my body. Yes, right here. And yes, exactly. I was like that. And he just kind of chuckles. I'm like, it's not funny.
It is funny.
It is funny. Yeah. But and so he had to focus on that part. And he goes, what did you do for a living? Or what do you do for a living? And I said, I almost don't want to tell you, because I'm slightly embarrassed that this is the way I am. But here's the thing too, is that when you're in the thick of it, when you are dialed in, you're not, as you said as well, we don't usually care about ourselves.
No,
We don't really
this.
think about it. Yes, that's another
That's
thing.
what I do.
Yes, and we carry all that tension there. But when you're going through it, when you finally give your chance a moment to slow down, that's when it all starts coming back. And the reason I had started going to the chiropractor is because all of that pain and everything that had built up that I wasn't paying attention to before ended up coming back. And I always tell people now, especially now, listen to your body,
Absolutely.
because eventually your body's going to make you listen. And
It's not pretty when that happens.
right, then you have to come back from it. So it was funny to see that and see myself like that. And it took some work, but yeah, use your headset.
I
Or-
love my headset. I couldn't do that when I was a kid. I hated, no, it doesn't even feel natural.
Yeah.
And I could always hear better with the headset and coming out of the speaker.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And, 'cause people would ask, what is it like when you're sitting there taking calls? And I would tell them, well, let me explain to you. Your left ear, or depending on where you have it, the one ear that's open is listening to everything in the room. And the other ear, where you're listening to what's the person who's speaking or maybe not speaking, is just an open line. You're listening to not only their voice or the sounds that they're making, but the entire environment within that phone call. And you're still answering radios, you're still typing, you're still doing all this other stuff, and the person will just look at me and go, how do you do it? Like, that's what we love to do. Like, it's in our blood. It's just, you just do it. You're in tune. You develop that dispatch ear where you're hearing everything that's going on.
You know what else I would tell?
What's that?
When they couldn't understand what dispatch ear was, mama's ear.
Oh, there you go. Yes. You're hearing
always,
everything.
My kids will be, how do you know? I got eyes in the back of my head, honey.
Exactly. Yeah. And, and a lot of people too would say, how do you develop that dispatch ear? And there was a person that I had on the podcast a while ago. It was probably 6 months or so ago, or a little more. And when she said this, I thought, that is a perfect way. And I started saying it as well, because I was kind of doing that in a sense before, and I never really realized. But what she said was that basically, sit in your living room, have your laptop or something, have something on TV, and have like music or whichever, have that all going on at the same time, but type what you're listening to from what's coming out on the TV. And if you can do all of that, like, that's how you can build that, because you're listening to certain things, but you're also focused here. And the way I explain what dispatch ear is, this is a way for you to think about it, for those who are watching and listening who don't know what I'm even talking about. Think about a movie. And in a movie, you have a slow motion sequence, and you see the camera zoom in to each piece of something that's going on slow motion. It's basically how we're doing it with our hearing, that we are zooming in and focusing on every little piece that is going on. And wherever we're able to pick it up.
Sometimes you only catch like a certain word or something, but you can piece it together.
Right.
And certain things just go together, and you just have to roll with it.
Right.
So
yeah. And also, dispatch ear doesn't go away.
No.
because I've got someone here, Christina here in the comments. She says, yes, mama's ears. There you go. Yeah. So, explaining that to people and everything, it's always funny to see kind of their reaction to it, but then they're like, that sounds really cool. I'm like, it is really cool.
It is very cool.
But it doesn't turn off. So what I mean by that too is, so this coming July will be 11 years since I've retired out of dispatch. But the dispatch ear doesn't go away. I will be at getting lunch or dinner with somebody, and I'll make a face, and they'll go, what did you hear? And I'll say, the person like 3 tables down, man, they're in trouble. Like their spouse or whoever is
when they go home.
yes, exactly. Let's see. Christina over here says, and once you actually get it, it's the best feeling ever. Like, yes, I can do this. She goes, I knew it when I got a VIN on the first try. Yeah.
She's a newbie.
Uh-huh.
And she's describing what I call when the light bulb goes off.
Yes.
Because when you're training, God love them, they look so perplexed and so lost. And I can't do this. Yes, you can. Trust me. It'll come.
Right.
One day, all of a sudden, the light bulb's going to go off and it's going to all click. And they're like, no. And it is so awesome when that light bulb goes off and you can see it on their face. And it was like, I got it. Yep.
Yes.
I told you it would happen.
It's like you said, it's like that, that the mom or dad, that parent feeling or whichever, when you're training someone, and yeah, you see that, and you yourself, you get that feeling, and
You
you're like,
feel good.
yes, like
You
hell
feel
yes,
real good, and God forbid, because it's not for everybody.
right,
It
yes,
truly is not for everybody. And I can remember, having those ones that just the light bulb never activated, and feeling frustrated. And did I let them down? Could I have done something different? Should I have trained this way? Um, but you really have to look at each individual person and figure out what style seems to work best for them, and then gear your training towards their personal style. Some are hands on, some need to hear it. Plus, I do different styles throughout the whole training with the same person. Sometimes it's using videos and letting them hear prior calls, and
yes,
letting them type and pull out, letting them listen on a live call, and they're sitting at a different computer on a training CAD and having to put in what they think is important, and then I let them compare it to what I've got, and that helps them learn all kinds of different ways. And some people get it, like right now. I had one, God love him, Brian. I used to tell him all the time what I wouldn't give to clone you, because he was like a sponge. I'd say something one time, maybe have to say this a second time, and he just soaked it all in, everything, and never forgot anything. And he was trained in less than 3 months.
wow,
And average time 6 months to a year, just
right,
depending, before they can truly stand on their own. And that's the other thing with this profession. You can't just, if you're short, you can't just pull any Joe Blow in there and do it,
very
because
true.
there's so much you have to know. And it comes, and every day you learn something new. So you never know what you're going to get.
I love that. Now we're going on to the wrap up of this. We're going to take a break at 11 o'clock. It's 10:53 now, but I want to ask you one last question, and I hope you don't mind, actually, because it's the question that I told everyone yesterday to kind of think about. And the question was, if you could go back in time with the knowledge that you have now to talk to yourself in the beginning, what are some things that you would tell yourself? Like, what advice would you give yourself? And the reason I ask this too is not so much for people to think about going back in time to change anything, because and my son actually was the inspiration for this question, because he, out of nowhere, one day we were riding together. I've never said this before until just now, but we had a moment. We stopped at fast food and we got a burger and fries, and we were just sitting in the parking lot, and he goes, "Dad," he goes, would you do you think you would ever change anything in the past? Like, if you could go back in time, would you change anything? And I said, no. I said, because think about this. I said, if I hadn't gone through all the stuff that I went through that made me decide I need to change and go to Florida, if I were to go back and change that, any of that I went through, you would not exist, because I would not have gone to Florida. I probably wouldn't have gone into this profession or anything. So no, I wouldn't change anything, because um, everything that I went through made me who I am today. And I'm grateful for that struggle, in the sense, because I learned from it. And even though I failed many, many times, I learned from those and clawed my way back. So that's why I've been asking this question as well, to see what other people think, not so much to change anything, but just to kind of talk to yourself and give yourself some sort of advice. What would you tell yourself?
I wouldn't. The only thing I think I would have changed is put my family first
Hmm.
instead of the job. My youngest child was 6 years old when I started. And unfortunately, the day he graduated high school was a really hard day for me. It was over. Life as I knew it was over. My babies were all now grown and adults. And I could see all the things I missed because I worked too much I wished I'd have learned to say no sooner. Um, I can remember actually the gentleman I was speaking about, Brian. He has moved up to a higher position and done very well. He's a very intelligent man, and he has a young family. And I can remember telling him that, that it is okay to say no, that it doesn't have to just be you covering all the overtime. Um, you know, to work 120 to 155 hours in 2 weeks is absurd. And you don't have time to take care of yourself. It's not necessarily you don't want to, you don't have the time. But I told him, don't follow my steps. Learn to say no. And he did. And he has had another child and, strengthened his marriage and spending time with his children. And truthfully, it's not the job that's going to take care of you in the end. It's going to be your family. And family has to be first. And I made the mistake of not putting family first. And I paid a high price. High price.
That makes perfect sense, and thank you very, very much for sharing that, being open, and everything that you've shared. And I am so excited for you. I am damn proud of you. Like this has been amazing. And let's see, we've got a comment here. Linda is awesome. I was her partner for so many years. We had some crazy calls
Is that Janet?
The name here, let me see. Yes, she says, I am Janet.
I love you, girlfriend. She's the one that is responsible for me being here today. Truthfully. I love you.
Thank you, Janet. Whew. Making moments, full circle moments, connections. You are definitely where you're supposed to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
This is the end. She just said, I love you more. This is the end of part one of National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week 2024, this partnership that I have with the North Carolina 911 board. And this has been amazing. We're going to come back here at about 11:30, and I'll have some more guests that are coming on. And thank you all for everything that you do. And I can't say enough. So again, we're signing off here for a moment, and we'll be back here around 11:30. We'll talk to you all soon.